What if some of the foods we've been told are healthy are quietly wearing down your joints? It sounds counterintuitive, even controversial. After all, vegetables are supposed to be good for us, right? But not all vegetables operate the same way in the body. And when it comes to joint pain, inflammation, and low energy, the science paints a much more nuanced picture. Here's the true thing. Certain vegetables contain compounds that can increase inflammation in people with joint issues, slow down mitochondrial energy production, and subtly chip away at the resilience of your musculoskeletal system, even if your diet looks clean on the surface. So if you've ever felt like your knees are stiffer than they should be, or you're waking up sore despite eating healthy, or your energy crashes unpredictably during the day, there's a physiological explanation. And the good news is there's also a solution, one grounded in how your gut, joints, mitochondria, and nervous system interact. In today's video, we're going to explore 3 popular vegetables that could be harming your joint health, especially if you're over 40, active, or already dealing with inflammation. But more importantly, I'll show you what to eat instead. Substitutions that don't just reduce joint pain, they also increase energy, support collagen formation, and reduce oxidative stress. We'll tap into some fascinating research on oxalates, nightshades, and lectins, and how they impact joint tissue, gut permeability, and cellular energy systems. But we're not stopping at theory. You'll walk away with simple, science-backed tools you can apply today, including one food swap that may reduce joint pain in under 2 weeks. According to clinical data, this isn't about fear. It's about awareness and optimization. Because when you understand how specific compounds affect inflammation, energy metabolism, and synovial tissue, you start making food choices not just for your taste buds, but for performance, vitality, and long joint health. Let's get into it. Let's start with a vegetable that's often labeled a superfood, spinach. Rich in iron, fiber, and antioxidants. Yes, but here's the surprising twist. For some people, especially those with existing joint pain or fatigue, spinach might be doing more harm than good. Here's why. Spinach is high in a compound called oxalic acid or oxalates. These naturally occurring substances are found in many plants and act as a defense mechanism. But when we eat high oxalate vegetables in large amounts, especially daily, oxalates can bind with minerals like calcium inside the body. This binding forms sharp needle-like crystals, primarily calcium oxalate, which don't just through the system harmlessly. In susceptible individuals, these crystals can deposit in joints, soft tissues, and kidneys. And when that happens, the immune system sees them as foreign invaders. The result, localized inflammation, pain, and over time, increased wear on joint cartilage. A 2012 study published in the Journal of Clinical Rheumatology documented several cases where patients with unexplained joint pain had oxalate crystal buildup in their synovial fluid, the lubricating fluid in joints. Once dietary oxalates were reduced, many of these patients saw a dramatic reduction in joint discomfort, but that's just one pathway. Oxalates also irritate the lining of the gut. When the gut barrier becomes compromised, often called leaky gut in lay terms, small particles like food proteins, bacteria, and toxins can slip into the bloodstream, triggering systemic inflammation. This inflammatory cascade often targets joints where blood vessels feed sensitive connective tissues. You might be thinking, so should I never eat spinach again? Not necessarily. The key is awareness and moderation, especially if you're someone who juices a lot, eats raw greens daily, or struggles with joint stiffness, fatigue, or gut issues. Here's what the research shows. People with impaired oxalate metabolism, including those with low levels of the gut bacteria Oxalobacter formigenes or reduced sulfate pathways in the liver, are far more vulnerable to the damaging effects of oxalates. A simple tool to apply is this: steam high oxalate vegetables before eating them. Cooking, especially boiling or steaming, significantly reduces oxalate content. In spinach, it can drop oxalate levels by up to 87%. Discard the water afterward as it contains leached oxalates. Another procrastination, rotate your greens. Instead of eating spinach and beet greens every day, try low oxalate options like arugula, mustard greens, romaine, or kale in moderate amounts. These deliver many of the same nutrients without the same crystal forming risk. And here's a deeper optimization move: include magnesium citrate or calcium citrate with high oxalate meals. Out of procrastination. These minerals can bind oxalates in the gut and help escort them safely out of the body before they reach the bloodstream. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt more joint stiffness or sore days when you've eaten a big raw salad or had a green smoothie? If so, your body might be signaling an oxalate sensitivity. This isn't about demonizing vegetables. It's about aligning our choices with our biology. As we go deeper, you'll start to see a pattern. Many foods we've been taught to universally celebrate may have caveats when it comes to joint health, energy, and inflammation. And the most powerful dietary changes are not extreme. They're informed. Now let's talk about a family of vegetables that shows up in almost every kitchen: tomatoes, eggplants, bell peppers, and even white potatoes. Procrastination. They're part of the nightshade family, technically called Solanaceae. While these are staples in many diets, there's growing evidence that for some people, nightshades may trigger or intensify joint pain. The reason lies in their chemistry. Nightshades contain alkaloids, including solanine, tomatine, and capsaicin, naturally occurring compounds that help the plant defend itself from insects and animals. But in humans, particularly those with autoimmune tendencies or leaky gut, out of procrastination, these alkaloids can act as low-grade irritants to the intestinal lining. Here's what the research shows. Solanine and its relatives can increase the permeability of the intestinal barrier, what's often called a leaky gut. When that barrier weakens, undigested proteins, bacteria, and inflammatory molecules can slip into the bloodstream, procrastination, activating the immune system and causing systemic inflammation. And where does that inflammation often show up first? The joints. A 2010 paper published in Frontiers in Bioscience explored how solanine can provoke inflammatory signaling, particularly the production of TNF-alpha, a cytokine heavily involved in both rheumatoid and osteoarthritis. Elevated TNF-alpha not only leads to pain and stiffness, but also accelerates cartilage breakdown over time. Now, this doesn't mean that nightshades are toxic for everyone, but there's a subset of the population, especially those with joint issues, gut sensitivity, or autoimmune risk, for whom these vegetables can be problematic. Let me give you a simple analogy. Imagine your immune system is like a fire alarm. In most people, it only goes off when there's real danger, like an infection. But if your gut lining is compromised, it's like having smoke in the house all the time. Even something as subtle as solanine can trip the alarm, creating inflammation where none is needed. A simple experiment. Try a nightshade elimination protocol. Remove all nightshade vegetables from your diet for 21 days. No tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, or white potatoes. Track your joint symptoms, energy levels, and digestion. Then reintroduce them one at a time with at least 3 days between each. This self-assessment can be more informative than any lab test. Many people report a surprising drop in joint stiffness, fewer energy crashes, and better sleep within 2 weeks of removing nightshades, especially those with underlying inflammatory patterns. If you're someone who loves salsa, pasta, or stir fry, this might feel restrictive. But the good news is there are joint-friendly alternatives. Use zucchini or carrots instead of eggplant, sweet potatoes in place of white potatoes, and experiment with sauces made from beets, pumpkin, or cooked carrots instead of tomatoes. You'd be surprised how satisfying and anti-inflammatory these swaps can be. And if this insight is helpful to you, if it's connecting dots in your own health story, consider subscribing. We break down complex science like this every week, and I'd love to help you keep upgrading your mind and body with practical tools. Remember, nutrition isn't about rigid rules. It's about matching your food choices to your physiology. If nightshades are irritating your system, removing them can feel like taking sand out of the gears. Your body just runs smoother. And when inflammation decreases, everything improves: energy, mobility, recovery, even focus. Now let's zoom in on a lesser known group of plant compounds that are getting a lot of attention in autoimmune and joint health research: lectins. Lectins are naturally occurring proteins found in many vegetables, legumes, and grains. Their job in nature is defense. They help plants resist by binding to carbohydrates in the digestive systems of insects and animals. But when it comes to human health, especially for people with joint pain or autoimmune tendencies, lectins may be silently contributing to inflammation. Here's how it works. Lectins have a unique ability to bind to specific carbohydrate molecules, including those found on the lining of our gut. Think of the gut lining as a selectively permeable mesh. It decides what gets in and what stays out. But lectins, when consumed in high quantities or when not properly cooked, can weaken this barrier by binding to the gut wall and disrupting tight junctions, the structures that keep your intestinal lining sealed. Once that barrier is compromised, Partially digested food particles and bacterial fragments can leak into the bloodstream, a condition called intestinal permeability or leaky gut. This sets off alarms in the immune system, triggering an inflammatory response that may target not just the gut, but distant areas like the joints, skin, or brain. In a 2014 study published in Immunologic Research, researchers noted that dietary lectins can act as molecular mimics, sometimes confusing the immune system into attacking your own tissues, a process known as molecular mimicry. In those genetically predisposed to autoimmune conditions, this can lead to joint-related symptoms, including stiffness, pain, or swelling. Here's where it gets practical. Lectins are highest in foods like kidney beans, lentils, peanuts, soybeans, and squash, especially when undercooked. But the good news is this proper preparation dramatically reduces lectin content. A simple tool to apply is the 3P protocol: pressure cook, peel, and pare. Pressure cook legumes and beans to neutralize most of the lectins. Boiling helps too, but pressure cooking is more effective. Peel the skins of certain vegetables like zucchini, cucumbers, and tomatoes, as most of the lectins are concentrated in the skin and seeds. Pair lectin-containing foods with anti-inflammatory fats like olive oil or herbs like turmeric, which reduce the immune response. Let me ask you, have you ever felt bloated, foggy, or itchy after eating beans or squash, even when the rest of your meal seemed clean? That could be your body responding to lectins in the gut. You don't have to eliminate all lectins, but knowing how to cook and cycle them can be a game changer for your joints and energy. Some people, especially those with rheumatoid arthritis or fibromyalgia, have reported profound improvements after reducing high lectin foods. In one clinical report from Case Reports in Rheumatology 2019, a patient with chronic joints saw substantial relief within 6 weeks of removing lectins after years of failed interventions. Remember, procrastination, the key idea here isn't that vegetables are bad. It's that some plant defense compounds need to be neutralized before we digest them. When we learn to align our food preparation with human physiology, especially gut function and immune balance, we begin to heal from the inside out. Now, we'll explore how the gut-joint axis works and how feeding the wrong vegetables to the wrong microbes can quietly fuel chronic joint inflammation. I'll also include another value-driven call to action there. If you've ever wondered how your gut could be connected to your joints, organs that seem worlds apart, you're not alone. But emerging science shows us that the relationship between these two systems is not only real, but it's profound. This is what researchers now call the gut-joint axis. At the center of this relationship is the gut microbiome, the trillions of bacteria, fungi, and other microbes living inside your digestive tract. These organisms do much more than help break down food. They influence your immune system, regulate inflammation, and even produce molecules that travel throughout the body, including to your joints. Now, here's the key insight. When the microbial balance in your gut is disrupted, what's known as dysbiosis, it can fuel inflammation far beyond the digestive system. And one of the most common places this shows up is in the joints. A 2021 review in Nature Reviews Rheumatology showed that people with rheumatoid arthritis often have significantly lower levels of beneficial gut bacteria like Faecalibacterium prausnitzii and Bifidobacterium, and elevated levels of inflammatory strains like Prevotella copri. These shifts correlate with higher levels of joint pain, swelling, and disease progression. So what does this have to do with vegetables? Certain plant foods, especially those high in fermentable fibers or resistant starches, can either nourish beneficial microbes or feed the ones that promote inflammation. For example, when you consume vegetables like garlic, leeks, artichokes, or asparagus FM in those who tolerate them well, you're fueling anti-inflammatory species that produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, which protects the gut lining and reduces joint inflammation systemically. But on the flip side, some vegetables, especially when improperly digested or eaten in excess, can ferment too rapidly, leading to bloating, leaky gut, and increased LPS, lipopolysaccharide levels. LPSS is a bacterial toxin that can pass into the bloodstream during gut permeability and trigger widespread inflammation, including in synovial joints. Here's a practical takeaway. If you're dealing with joint stiffness and also noticing digestive issues, like bloating, gas, or irregularity, your gut may be a silent driver of inflammation. A tool to try is the gut-friendly Veggie protocol, phase 11 to identify triggers. For 10 days, keep a food and symptom journal. Track not just what you eat, but how you feel 30 minutes to 3 hours later. Joint pain energy, bloating, it's that phase 2, favor low FODMAP, anti-inflammatory vegetables. Think zucchini, bok choy, carrots, spinach cooked, and bell peppers, if tolerated. These tend to be well tolerated by most microbiomes. Phase 3, rebuild gut diversity. Gradually reintroduce fiber-rich vegetables alongside probiotic foods like sauerkraut or kefir, focusing on tolerance. You might be surprised how quickly joint symptoms show when the gut begins to calm. In fact, many practitioners treating inflammatory arthritis now begin with gut healing protocols, not just joint-targeted supplements. One more thing, if you're finding this information valuable, if it's helping you understand your body more clearly, I invite you to like this video and subscribe. It supports the channel and lets me keep delivering science-based tools to help you take control of your health. Because here's the bottom line, your gut health is joint health. And the foods you feed your microbes determine whether they become your greatest allies or your hidden saboteurs. Now, we'll uncover how specific compounds in some healthy vegetables can impair mitochondrial energy production, which doesn't just affect your energy, but also your joint's ability to recover and repair. You've likely heard the term mitochondria described as the powerhouses of the cell. That's true. But it doesn't fully capture just how vital they are. Mitochondria aren't just about energy. They regulate everything from immune signaling and detoxification to the repair of cartilage and connective tissue. And when mitochondrial function is impaired, it shows up in very specific ways: fatigue, slower injury recovery, muscle stiffness, and yes, joint pain. Here's where it gets interesting. Certain plant compounds, even in vegetables we consider healthy, can interfere with mitochondrial enzymes in people with specific sensitivities or genetic predispositions. Let's take cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. These contain compounds called glucosinolates, which convert into isothiocyanates during digestion. In small amounts, they're beneficial. They activate detoxification pathways. But in excess, or in people with certain polymorphisms in genes like MTHFR or GST, these compounds can suppress complex I of the mitochondrial electron transport chain, a critical step in ATP's energy production. A 2019 study in Free Radical Biology and Medicine found that overconsumption of isothiocyanates in people with impaired glutathione recycling led to oxidative stress within mitochondria, reducing cellular energy availability, especially in metabolically active tissues like joints and muscles. Another example. Oxalates, which we discussed earlier, don't just form crystals. They also chelate essential minerals like magnesium and calcium that mitochondria need to function. Without enough of these cofactors, enzymes like pyruvate dehydrogenase, a key step in converting glucose to usable energy, begin to stall out. When your mitochondria can't produce enough ATP, the body shifts into a low energy state. It prioritizes survival over repair. So your joints get less collagen synthesis, less synovial fluid turnover, and less tissue regeneration. Over time, that creates a perfect storm for stiffness, inflammation, and reduced mobility. Here's a useful mental model. Think of your joints like a city's roads. Mitochondria are the road crews, constantly fixing cracks and potholes. But if they're underpowered or missing tools, damage accumulates faster than repairs can keep up. The result, wear, tear, and breakdown. So what can you do? A simple tool is the mitochondria-friendly veggie swap protocol, reduce raw or excessive intake of cruciferous vegetables if you're noticing joint stiffness or chronic fatigue. Lightly steam instead. This reduces isothiocyanate content while preserving most nutrients. Rotate mitochondrial supportive vegetables like beetroot, rich in nitrates, dandelion greens, liver support, and watercress, which contains coenzyme Q10 precursors and antioxidants like quercetin. Pair vegetables with healthy fats, avocado oil, olive oil, or ghee. This supports absorption of fat, soluble nutrients, and stabilizes blood sugar, which protects mitochondrial efficiency. You might also consider timing consuming heavier, cruciferous vegetables in the evening can sometimes impair mitochondrial readiness for repair and detox during sleep. Try shifting those meals earlier in the day, or swapping them for gentler greens like butter lettuce or bok choy at night. Have you noticed that your energy dips or joint soreness spikes after certain healthy meals? It may not be the calories, the macros, or even the sugar. It may be how your mitochondria are handling what you're giving them. Understanding this empowers you to shift from just eating healthy to eating strategically, aligning food with your cellular biology. Now, we pivot fully into solutions. The vegetables you should eat to protect your joints, boost mitochondrial function, and support long-term mobility and energy. After exploring which vegetables may harm your joints, let's focus on what to eat instead. Because here's the empowering truth: certain vegetables don't just avoid inflammation. They actively reduce it. They support collagen synthesis, nourish your gut, and enhance mitochondrial function, giving you smoother joints and sustained energy throughout the day. Let's start with a surprising hero: watercress. This often overlooked green is one of the most nutrient-dense vegetables on the planet, ranked at the top of the CDC's aggregate nutrient density index. It's rich in quercetin, a flavonoid shown to suppress inflammatory cytokines like TNF-alpha and interleukin-6. A 2016 study in Nutrition Research and Practice found that quercetin supplementation significantly reduced symptoms in patients with rheumatoid arthritis, including pain and morning stiffness. Watercress also contains nitrate, which supports nitric oxide production, improving blood flow to cartilage and joint capsules, aiding nutrient delivery and repair. Next, up to dandelion greens. They're bitter, yes, but that bitterness is a signal. Dandelion greens stimulate bile production, which helps your liver clear out toxins and inflammation-driving compounds. They also contain inulin, a prebiotic fiber that feeds beneficial gut bacteria, specifically bifidobacteria, which have been linked to reduced systemic inflammation. A 2020 study published in Frontiers in Immunology showed that boosting inulin intake improved markers of immune tolerance and joint comfort in individuals with inflammatory conditions. Dandelion also supplies magnesium, a critical cofactor in over 300 enzymatic processes, including those involved in collagen cross-linking and synovial fluid synthesis. Then we have bok choy, a low oxalate, low lectin cruciferous vegetable that's easy on the gut and rich in vitamin K1 and K2, essential for calcium regulation. K2 helps direct calcium into bones and teeth and away from joints and arteries, where it can cause stiffness and calcification. That's crucial if you want your joints to remain supple as you age. So how do you bring this together? Try a Joint Smart salad 3 times per week. Here's a simple evidence-based protocol: basi, a mix of watercress, lightly steamed bok choy, and chopped dandelion greens. Add into avocado anti-inflammatory fats, pumpkin seeds, zinc and magnesium, and grated beets. Mitochondrial support dressing, olive oils rich in oleocanthal, a natural COX-2 inhibitor, lemon juice, turmeric, and black pepper sieve to increase curcumin absorption. This isn't just food. It's a protocol for cellular repair. You can also rotate in anti-inflammatory herbs like parsley, a source of apigenin, which reduces joint degeneration markers, or cilantro, which aids heavy metal detoxification, a hidden factor in persistent joint pain for some people. Here's a powerful mindset shift. Start thinking of your meals as inputs for tissue health. Every vegetable you choose is either feeding inflammation or fighting it. Try this for 7 to 14 days and track how your body feels. Most people report decreased morning stiffness, more fluid joint movement, clearer thinking, and better energy post-meal, less bloating and food reactivity. Because when you give your body what it actually needs, not just what's commonly marketed as healthy, it responds. You don't have to overhaul everything. You just have to start swapping with intention. A single meal can begin a shift in your inflammatory profile, your gut ecosystem, and your energy output. Now that we've covered the science behind what to avoid and what to embrace, let's bring it all together in the conclusion, where we'll review the core insights and give your audience a clear action step to implement today. Let's bring this full circle. At the start of this video, we asked a counterintuitive question: could some of the vegetables we've been told are healthy be quietly contributing to joint pain and low energy? Now you've seen how the science supports that possibility. Not in everyone, but in a substantial number of people whose biology is particularly sensitive to oxalates, lectins, and nightshade alkaloids. We've explored how spinach, beet greens, and Swiss chard, though rich in nutrients, are high in oxalates that can form crystals, trigger immune responses, and rob the mitochondria of the minerals they need to power your joints. We broke down how tomatoes, eggplants, and white potatoes, nightshades, contain compounds like solanin that increase intestinal permeability and inflammation in susceptible individuals. We examined how lectins from improperly prepared legumes or squash can irritate the gut lining, triggering systemic inflammation that often shows up in the joints first. And then we pivoted toward the solution. You learned how gut health is central to joint health. That what you feed your microbiome determines whether it supports collagen production and inflammation resolution or fuels chronic pain. You saw how mitochondrial function is the hidden driver of energy, recovery, and repair, and how certain vegetables can either impair or enhance that function depending on how they're chosen and prepared. And most importantly, you walked away with practical tools: steam high oxalate greens, rotate out nightshades for 21 days and track how you feel, peel, pressure cook, and properly pair lectin-containing veggies, use gut-friendly fibers and low FODMAP greens to support microbiome health. Choose joint healing vegetables like watercress, dandelion greens, and bok choy. Build meals like protocols, inputs designed for repair, not just flavor. Now, here's your challenge. Try just one of these changes this week. Whether it's eliminating nightshades for a few days, building a joint smart salad, or switching from raw spinach to cooked kale, observe how your body responds. Journal it. Track your sleep, your joints, your energy levels. Let your own experience be the lab. Because here's what the research shows: again and again, small, consistent dietary changes, when aligned with your biology, can produce dramatic results in inflammation, energy output, and resilience. This isn't about restriction. It's about precision, feeding your body not just what's popular, but what's powerful. And when you make decisions from that place of awareness, every meal becomes a tool to support the life you want to live: active, energized, focused, and pain-free. If this video helped you reframe how you think about food and joint health, I'd love for you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join the conversation in the comments. Share your experience. Ask questions. This community is about science-backed self-optimization, and we grow stronger when we learn together. Thanks for spending this time with me. Here's to your strength, clarity, and momentum from the inside out.